morning and welcome to our September 26, 2022 9 o'clock strategic planning meeting. Let the record reflect that all three commissioners are present in our executive management team. And we are going to start off with a bid opening, and I'm going to let Matt Zierk, our county engineer, discuss it.
Good morning. We had a problem with the bids. We had a bid that was properly received on last week, September 21st, prior to the 11 o'clock cutoff. We had backup staff covering the front counter, and they were not aware that these were time sensitive and needed to be forwarded to the clerk for opening. So we know it was received properly, so we needed to open it at other than that public hearing. So we're going to open it today. It's from Big Sky Industries, and read it into the record, and then add it to our bid tabs for that project, and then move that project forward. We'd like to have it on the 2 o'clock consent agenda tomorrow for award. So that's why we're doing it today instead of tomorrow.
Okay, so then it'll be based on everything meeting the criteria, it'd be on tomorrow's as a bite.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is on the agenda tomorrow.
It's already on the agenda, so it's not widely. Okay. Very good. Thank you very much.
The bid is received by Big Sky Corporation. There is a bid bond. Total $1,126,766.90. $1,126,766.90. This bid is received to This bid is referred to the Public Works Department for review and analysis for award by the board. That concludes the bid opening.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, they're going to just take it right away. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And then action will be taken tomorrow.
Yep.
Based on your recommendation. Okay. Thank you. So next that takes us to Kyle Tuig.
Good morning. We have an agreement with Fairchild Air Force Base today. I'm going to have Deb introduce the agreement here today. We have representatives from Fairchild here as well. And this is with regards to monitoring wells to continually assess groundwater contamination.
Hi, Commissioners. Deborah Firkin. Good morning.
We did receive an application from the Air Force Base to put in monitoring wells in a number of our roads in order to monitor groundwater from contamination. And we believe that it would be better in a license agreement at this point because they might need to add some in the future or take some away until they finally get to a point where they have a set number that we might be able to put into a franchise. And that is why we're going in the license agreement route.
And so for clarity, the actual locations of the wells will be individually permitted and reviewed by staff. Ideally, we've discussed, if possible, it'll be out of the roadway, out of the ditch, just kind of right at the back of our right of way. But these will be in our right of way, and they will be Fairchild's monitoring wells.
Again, any other questions? We do have representatives from the Fairchild Air Force Base.
Hi.
To answer
Hello.
questions. Yeah. Do you want to actually state your name and for the
Since you can't see me behind the
Yes.
column. So I'm Megan Rigabono. I am the remedial project manager at Fairchild Air Force Base. So I am in charge of restoration to clean up PFAS, which is an ongoing issue around, and other off-base contamination. And these 16 monitoring wells are going to help us delineate the plume for PFAS. We are currently doing 16, but in the future, we may add more. We're trying to put our current 16 in paleo channels. Paleo channels are just ancient riverbeds, which basically are moving PFAS from the base, off base, into surrounding community. And thus, we strategically have placed them that way so we can get more information.
Thank you.
No problem.
Did anyone else want to speak? Or you?
I'm Amber Wisber, and I'm the PM also supporting the restoration program. Just wanted to say
Thank you.
I'm Jack Mapes. I'm the contractor for Megan and Amber. I just help support anything they need to do on base.
And then which, so if you're the contractor, which company do you work with?
For Aegis.
Aegis. Okay, very good. Well, thank you. We appreciate you doing the monitoring and to know for our community. So, and then this will be on tomorrow's agenda or next week's?
Next week.
Next week's. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I don't think we have any other questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here this morning.
Thank you.
It's gonna take us to Jeff McMorris.
So, a quick ARP update. We're in a situation now where we're having a little bit of a domino effect, and we need to move some first pieces to allow other things to fall into place. Just by way of reminder, our public health other has been open for a while, and we've just not received information that was needed from public health.
I had talked to Carrie, and we were gonna try to hook up with you on Friday, and my schedule didn't allow it, so.
Perfect, so we'll get, our hope is that next week on consent, that we can move public health and nonprofits. Because the domino effect is right now, we also have the affordable housing category that is open. It closes this Wednesday in 48 hours. And then we also have open, which doesn't close until October 7th, the tourism, travel, hospitality category, economic impact assistance, other, and the community violence interventions. Quite a few of the nonprofit applications are better fitted into some of the categories that we have now opened up. So we have let those groups know that they are welcome to apply in those categories also. But they're also looking to see conclusions on the nonprofit category to know if that's a wise use of their time. And so we just have some overlapping layers here. And so if we can move the nonprofits and the public health other next week at consent, and it might just mean, depending on the information we have from public health, we move the rest of that category. It wouldn't spend all the funding, so there'd still be funding to move other pieces at a later date, but it will help some of the current applications. We had like 45 applications that came in for nonprofit, and many of them would reapply if they know they should and need to. So that's kind of where we are. It's all going to work out just great. Just need to force some decision making next week. Not that I force you guys to do anything. Present some opportunities for you guys to possibly make some decisions if you're ready. That's a better statement, I think.
In addition to the dynamics Jeff talked about, this is also what we're going to call our closure week for the U.S. Treasury for our quarterly report that's due in October. And that does, again, what we complete and what we have wrapped up does impact how we report to the Treasury. In on that, we are going to hold, because of this little bit of a bottleneck, on releasing our remaining RFPs that we had in the second tranche until we finalize these, close out September. So right now those RFPs are queued and ready to go out the first middle week of October. So those are the large breadth of categories in infrastructure, 5.1 through 5.18 that deals with water and sewer only. And we will make sure that that is included along with neighborhood features. So those are the remaining. In addition to that, on your consent agenda for tomorrow, there is a resolution that talks about the direction of funding for our revenue replacement that we have been able to claim to date. We've been working with the budget office on that, and that revenue replacement intended areas are for county-owned businesses and facilities that need safety and well-being upgrades. And then the ERP system that will be a holistic look at processes and financial and operations management. In the event, and this is stated in the resolution, that we have additional revenue replacement funds after we have known budgets for those projects, it will be at the discretion of the board to finalize those out. So I wanted to let you know that will be on consent.
So that's on consent for tomorrow. I may want to delay that a week because I actually want to see how that money is really all being allocated out. Once we put it in a resolution, the auditors are going to be auditing to that. And so I want to make sure that I'm comfortable with where we're at on kind of, the dollars. I mean, I haven't seen, we've talked about a range for the ERP, that it could be anywhere from 4 to 8 million. So those are my concerns with, stating that we're going to allocate funds to that right now. Not quite knowing. So I just want to get a little more comfort with that before we have that before I approve the resolution. I don't know if anyone else is willing to give me the 1 more week to look into that.
The only dollar amounts in that resolution is the actual total of revenue replacement, to your very point. Happy to pull it. It's more of a direction of priority, saying that when we know.
Which I'm okay with,
FYI.
but I want to know that we've got a pretty good plan. And it's just been I've just had some high level discussions, and I would like to have a little bit more detailed discussion, just to make sure I'm comfortable in my mind where we're at on that.
Scott, how would you like us to proceed? Do you want Gary to go forward with those? Would you like us to have kind of a secondary briefing here, individual?
I think I'm happy to have the briefing just individually.
Okay, great.
I just want to make sure I'm clear where we're at on all of that before I commit to it. So that's why I say I'm not willing. I would like to just strike it from the agenda for tomorrow.
So is that 2S? Is that what that is?
It talks about 9.6 million.
Yes, 2S.
2S.
And I just want to make sure we're not getting ourselves in a pinch too with auditing and all of that, because as soon as you say you're going to spend it on those, now the auditors hold us to that. So
Sounds good. We are continuing to work with the CHHSD Community Services Department on ARP home alignment for that available use of home funds. The plan that Richard and Kat briefed last week is still open for public comment. When that comes in, we'll know how much of any of that can be braided in with the larger ARP treasury request. That's still kind of a work in progress. That ends our ARP update. We can go right into the broadband or wait until miscellaneous, depending on what you're.
I'd say just go ahead and go right into the broadband. We're ahead of schedule.
Oh, good. I always like to hear that.
Well, can I ask, so I guess, sorry to back up to Jeff though. So the nonprofit category did close, correct?
It's closed, the group has met and done a scoring matrix to present.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask. At what point are we gonna see kind of who ranked where?
Very soon.
Soon, okay.
We're in our final stages of the
Okay.
Soon is before later.
Yes.
But after immediately.
Okay.
We've been going through and looking at the different groups.
Yeah,
that-
no, I know you said some
Maybe they
fit better
should.
in other categories and stuff like that,
Because
but
we need to score like groups together.
Yes.
And so we shouldn't award a group a nonprofit if the category opened.
they fit somewhere
And
else.
so right after we scored, the next day, we opened 3 new categories based on votes that were taken the Tuesday before. So Tuesday, you voted on categories, Wednesday we scored, Thursday we opened categories. So that's why we're thinking we need to move some of the nonprofit to those other categories, so we're scoring all the red apples together and the oranges and another thing.
Got it.
Any other ARP questions? On your consent agenda for tomorrow is a template for the Washington State Broadband Office consideration of some elements related to their round 2 funding for broadband. That is scheduled to go out to all 15 legislators with a CC to the broadband director. We'll have wet copies for you at the dais, and then we will email those out, and then if needed, I'll follow up with paper copies. Those are, I think, time sensitive because the broadband office has asked for survey responses by October 4th. I have a draft of those responses, but they really fall into those areas of concern, not only for Spokane County, but counties overall. And those major categories have to do with open access. Open access meaning that the funds are going to be required, that they don't go into a private company's asset inventory without a duration of years, that it comes alongside the public sector in the awards. Financial matches. There are two different areas that they're asking for in this survey. And those are called threshold requirements, meaning are you scored ineligible or not? Or is it a scoring element, meaning does this just put you higher or lower on the risk, or on the scoring? I wanted to confirm with you that for Spokane County, open access would be a threshold requirement, meaning if it's not in there, that there's a shared applicant, that it would be deemed ineligible. Financial matches would also be a threshold requirement, meaning the 10% match, which would be the recommendation, would stay. That you can't do that if there's no matches. Digital equity is another one that they're wanting to know, would that be an eligible, yes ma'am?
So go back to the 10% match, explain that again. I'm sorry.
So right now, the broadband office has a 10% match.
Right.
Their question in this survey, which unfortunately is open text, I would have much preferred an online link that they had pre-sorted answers so that they could, that's not how they chose to do it, so we're having to put this on here. Right now in the first round, it was 10% match. They said, do we want to get rid of that? Do we want to make it bigger? Do we want to make it smaller? Do we want to make it so that X amount is public sector, X amount is private sector? In learning from other counties that are a little further beyond, that 10% is a real sweet spot that allows counties to show their buy-in without pressure for them to have undue relationships with the private sector. When you get above 20%, you get into that where you've already kind of pre-selected your private sector vendor. So again, should we continue to support that threshold requirement of 10% minimum, 20% maximum in those grant requirements?
And then do we also want to put in that we really want to have this broadband completed by the end of 2026 so we can use that match? Because otherwise,
good point,
hard for us to commit to 10 or 20% when it's not the federal dollars that are allowed to be used for that.
That's a great call out.
And some of this is consistency. So our county proposal for the first round was thrown out because it wasn't open access. And you had to be open access to be considered. Based on the postmortem of why we didn't get selected, we have spent several months working towards what they told us to do. And now they're thinking about changing all the rules. And so by keeping the open access, by keeping some sort of match, that really, I just think is a fairness issue there. They told us to do that. We've been working on it. So don't change. I don't care what the rules are, just don't change them at the last minute.
Which is part of why we have these letters going out to representatives, just for that purpose. So yes, and I had a good meeting this morning already regarding those issues.
The other element that they are seeking, is it a threshold, meaning eligible or ineligible requirement, or scoring requirement, is digital equity. From my experience, so to date in broadband and with Petrichor, who's worked with us in other counties, I feel that a scoring element for digital equity would be most appropriate, that it needs to be in the review of the proposal, but because the construct of digital equity looks different across all of the counties, that what might be the proper investment here may not be the proper investment there. And so the whole eligible, ineligible really is a hard thing to have that, off on trigger. Whereas making sure that the digital equity component is robust enough for whatever's being asked and scoring it accordingly seem to be a better fit. So that is, in my viewpoint, in our reply back, that particular piece. They also wanted to ask about the challenge process. To Jeff's point, in round one, challenge processes were allowed, but there were parameters. Our recommendation that continues. They did pull out the challenge process currently in effect by the Public Works Board. And in my opinion, that's really better fitted to building bridges and roads and things that were very above surface tangible versus the curb board that we've been very familiar with in our broadband feasibility study. Those challenge process seems a little bit better fitted. So our recommendation is maybe to move their alignment closer to curb board because it is more economic related versus pure public works. And that does give a little bit better protection for both the public side as well as opportunity for the private side if there are concerns of contestment. So that's kind of how I'm phrasing that part.
So when you talk about challenge, are you talking about challenge for our users or challenge for the jurisdiction that's going to be a partner in this thing?
Providers.
Correct.
We
A
get an
challenge of the
award.
award given.
We receive an award and some entity says Spokane shouldn't receive it because of X, Y, Z.
Oh,
And
is
they
that
can
kind of a
actually challenge
Okay.
our recipient
I'm with it.
getting it.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking of a different connotation for challenge in terms of things you're trying to overcome.
It's quite delicate. So those are the big areas. There's a few others that they want to talk about. Definition of last mile service. We're really leaning into Petrichor to help us with that. They've created a letter. And then the last one, they want to know, which just seemed odd to me that this was part of the survey, but they wanted to know if there should be a checklist for application preparation guidance. And to me, I'm like, yes. You know, everybody going out should know, do I have all of these elements? So those were kind of the more obvious ones, but I wanted to make sure that we were hitting the preference of the board and those that have a little bit more sensitivity.
And remember that this survey originally only went out to 50 individuals, of which counties were.
We were not one of the
We were
50.
not one of the counties.
We got
on
a
that
third
list.
person, yeah.
So it went out to a lot of providers, across the state. And so it was very interesting how it went out, but we're all trying to share and make sure that everyone's getting their comments back.
And of course, the providers weren't biased in any way. No,
Yeah.
no.
They've never
As I
posted it on
say,
their website
Never
either.
been posted on there.
As I say, it's kind of like if you give federal dollars to build a bridge, and you've got a contractor who builds that bridge, and then they get to toll anybody who uses that bridge for their own personal gain.
Yeah.
Great analogy. But then they'll do the maintenance and all of that, but it's still, that's kind of the analogy that I have used.
So, two other things. The federal government came out with a notice of funding last week. It came to us through Senator Murray's office for the smart cities. They're reviving that. We did talk about it, that at the broadband action team. It was unanimous that that really is a sweet spot for our urban cities. That those are urban core smart city designations under the Condon administration. I know they were really focusing on that. It kind of had a pause during COVID. So our stance at the broadband meeting, but I wanted to make sure it was the pleasure of the commissioners is to let that be an area that the cities could lean into. We could obviously be letters of support and whatnot, but if we want that smart cities designation and funding for large events like the Hoop Fest or Drive Up Wi-Fi or all of those things, that could be owned by them as lead applicants. And then we are continuing to work on the Public Development Authority for broadband. So that once again is ongoing with legal, with some of our key stakeholders, and will be before you shortly as at least a framework of the oversight governance entity will be a component for what we look at in the mid-mile award that goes out this week, and anything subsequent when finally released from the state broadband office. And that is really coming together nicely.
So is there any pushback in terms of creating a regional PDA for broadband, and if there is, what's the nature of their concern?
At this point, as we've been talking with the stakeholders, I think everyone has been in support that it is the right vehicle. We had legal give a review for us. Did we want to go municipal corporation? Did we want to go a new line of business for the county? Did we want to do the PDA model? So I think what we did is we looked through all of those statutorily, and we asked executive leadership, and really that PDA not only is familiar to us, but gives us the most flexibility in going forward. First and foremost, that the PDA itself is virtually nothing, that it doesn't have a lot of management itself to utilize fund, that it's really that structural mechanism to hold the assets, to contract with expertise to manage the assets, and then to get revenues back to the small entities participating in it. So it's worked out quite well.
So it's really gonna be for just the open access piece. If we can get the open access piece, this would be the means to help manage it instead of every small town trying to figure out how to manage it themselves. So the larger cities may not be participating because they don't need to because they're already on a closed system. They'll be sad that they're not on an open system.
And to date, everyone has been in support of the oversight board of that would be of executive non-elect. So for the unincorporated area, the CEO of the county, the different towns would have appointed non-elects. That just seems to have been something that everyone feels makes a lot of sense. So more on that. We had some time-sensitive milestones, but this has been percolating in the background with a lot of, I think, positive support. So that will be coming shortly.
Who are the stakeholders that have been at those meetings?
So
I mean, if you're talking large cities probably not participating, which smaller?
Large cities are there.
They're all.
Oh, they are there.
This is
So
through the BAT team.
Yeah.
So we've got providers, so Comcast, Sibley, all of those are there. TDS now's there.
Who from smaller local jurisdictions have actually been
So
in
we had the
attendance?
5 cities of the South, so regularly Latah and Fairfield and Rockford, sometimes Spangle and Waverly. We've had secondary.
Medical Lake.
Medical Lake's
Yeah,
always a
Medical
big
Lake.
one.
And those we've actually had secondary conversations with outside of the BAT team because, to Commissioner Cuney's point, they really could leverage that revenue source, and they're understanding this concept of the PDA. Going forward, our other small municipalities, whether it be the Millwoods or the Deer Parks, may choose. That's why it's going to probably be defined as a rollable board, depending on how the municipalities adopt it.
But it really depends on open access
Agreed.
for them.
Agreed.
So like if Millwood's already Comcast is already the provider there, there's not a lot of opportunity for them to go open access.
But the economic development person from the city is at the table.
Yes, Steve McDonald.
Yeah, I couldn't think of his name. Is the Valley, we meet in the Valley, are they?
Yeah, no, John Holman's
Yeah,
usually
that's
there.
right, John Holman there. So the bigger jurisdictions are part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Even though they're in a different place when it comes to the needs and the value of this.
Okay.
Because part of what the BAT team is really good, and I'm hearing from different people that we've, Arian's doing a great job of managing it instead of having a community person manage it. That, we're really there, like talking about all the things that are happening because there's a lot of, other grants that are going to be coming out that other people are going to be able to go after. So it's really a great forum to get all that information out for everyone to understand what's going on.
And by weaving in digital divide and digital equity to the actual assets themselves, I think that that's kept our larger urban entities engaged because that's really their space and the areas that they can lean in, not only for funding, but for opportunities for vulnerable populations for subsidy, as well as to help them with their franchise agreements. Because sometimes the infrastructure is there, they just haven't been able to coordinate the expansion for gaps of services in that infrastructure with the franchise operators. So it's helping us become smarter about how to use what we have better.
And who's been there from Avista? There's someone from Avista that's been.
Letitia's been to some of them, but.
Yeah, and then Angela, I can't remember her last name. Thank you.
Moffett, yeah.
Thank you. She's been quite engaged. She actually provided the letter of support on behalf of Avista for our mid-mile grant. So she's been kind of their lead, obviously with Letitia at the executive level. So they've been quite engaged in that.
So, yeah, so it's been a really great forum for everyone to really be talking about it, you know, and having everyone at the table, so thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay, that takes us to Scott.
Couple things under miscellaneous commissioners. We've had a request from Special Mobility Services, who is located out in the valley. They are applying for a 4-year grant through WashDOT to receive funding to support their mobility services. Looks like it's a lot of medical appointments, seniors. They've been in the, you may be familiar with them, they've been in Spokane since the 80s. And they are requesting a letter of support from the commissioners as part of their next round of grant applications to WashDOT. So we've got, have we done this in the past, Gina? Okay, so this has been something we've done in past years as well. So if you're supportive of this, they are asking for a letter of support by the 7th of October, so we could include it on next week's consent agenda.
And the letter is to support them doing what?
Receiving, they're asking for the funding from WashDOT sustains their current travel and training programs and the community shuttle. And then they're also looking to replace some of their aging vehicles as well.
So the community shuttles to where?
They provide, it looks like they provide services from Deer Park to Spokane, Newport to Spokane, Davenport to Spokane, and Ritzville to Spokane. So it touches outlying counties and outlying cities in other counties into Spokane, as well as Deer Park within the county to Spokane as well.
Okay.
So all getting into Spokane for medical appointments.
And so the grant is WashDOT's providing the funding.
They would be providing the funding. Yep, this would just be support for their grant application.
So I wonder how this either mirrors, complements, or competes with STA's paralegal program.
Yeah, that's a good question. Their paratransit.
Paratransit program, yeah, not paralegal.
Their paratransit is only goes so far,
Yeah, it
because like I
doesn't go
know,
outside, that
Yeah.
far outside
because like
Oh,
my,
that's right, this goes to Deer Park.
well, and then he was saying Ritzville and
Ritzville.
Newport, I mean, that's
Never mind, yeah,
Way
STA can only go 3/4 of a mile outside the PTBA.
It sounds like
So
it's
this-
complementary.
Yeah, it'd be complementary to it. Okay, all right, thank you.
yeah,
Worked
because
my
I
way
just,
through it.
yeah, no, I just remember my nephew was just outside
Yeah.
when he had his accident, was in a wheelchair, and he couldn't get STA
Yeah,
because he was just outside the boundaries.
yeah, STA's got a federal restriction to 3/4 of a mile. All right, thanks.
And then also, or on tomorrow's consent agenda, there is a consideration for the board to approve a application to the City of Spokane Valley's Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. The Lodging Tax Advisory Committee has a component for eligible capital improvements made to government-owned facilities. In this case, the Indians are seeking, Spokane Indians are seeking funds from LTAC to provide capital funding for the Avista Stadium. However, because it's limited to a government entity having to apply for the funds, and since the county owns Avista Stadium, it would be the county sending the application in support of the Indians' request, Spokane Indians' request for the capital facility. So the request is for $4 million to LTAC. The applications are due by Friday. So it was, we just learned of this last week. Applications to LTAC are due by this Friday. From what I understand of the sequencing, in late October, mid to late October, the LTAC advisory group will meet and have the entities who have applied come in and share their need, their application details. And then in late November, early December, LTAC will come back with a recommendation for Spokane Valley City Council for them to consider what their recommendations are and approve them. So that is on the consent agenda for tomorrow. And that's all the miscellaneous I have.
And then we've got the agenda for the state of the county.
It is on consent tomorrow, yep, and it's in your packet too.
So that'll be on the consent agenda for tomorrow. Okay, so it's 9:37. Are we gonna do any executive sessions?
I think we could, because we have time before our 10 o'clock budget meetings.
I don't know if anyone, does anyone have any, do you have to be gone at a certain time?
Yeah, GSI is doing its board meeting today, so I've got to be gone for that. So probably should be out of here by 11:30.
Okay, that's why I was thinking it's Monday.
Yeah, it's
Usually there's
Monday.
a GSI thing.
Yeah, so, and
Okay.
I do have an executive session item too,
Okay,
for pending potential litigation.
Okay.
And maybe 15 minutes.
okay, so we've got about 20 minutes before our next,
And we have, Kyle's got one as well, under pending potential litigation. That's probably 5 minutes? Yeah, like 5 minutes.
okay, 5 minutes.
Yep.
You can go.
And I have one that's 15. We can do it tomorrow if you'd rather.
Do one tomorrow?
Yeah, do you want to do yours today or tomorrow?
Timely, I mean,
Uh,
we're not bumping something we need to know right away, is it?
I think, Mark, what's your timing? Is it tomorrow fine?
Tomorrow will work, that's no problem.
Mine's probably a little bit more time sensitive, so
Okay.
if we do it today, that would be helpful.
Do it today. Okay, so I need, so you can state the purpose and who you want in again, and that it's for 15 minutes.
Yeah, so executive session for the purposes of discussing pending or potential litigation, and I'd like to have, obviously, all three commissioners and their executive management team, as well as Mark McLean. And no decision would be made, so.
Thank you, and then Kyle.
This is just regarding a conflict waiver for legal representation for one of our LTAC counsel.
And we'd have all the three commissioners, the executive management team, Mark McLean, I think Matt Koza, is that right?
And
It's in 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
No action.
Okay, very good. We're gonna go into executive session for 20 minutes. It's 9:40. We will be out at 10 o'clock for the purposes stated and with the people's that we've. So, thank you. We'll close out and go into executive session. Okay, thank you and welcome back. It is 10:13. We did finish our executive session at 10:10 and took a few minutes to get everybody back on and on the Zoom. So we will now continue our meeting, and we have up next, our clerk. Thank you, and I'm gonna let you kind of just introduce yourself and who you have with you.
Okay, so Tim Fitzgerald, Spokane County Clerk. I have Josh Frazier, he's my financial manager. And I have Gwenda Vogt, and she's my administrative manager. And both of them help me with budget and items, and Josh is gonna do a portion of the briefing today too.
Great.
So, all right, you can go to the next slide, Gina, if you'd like to.
Contact for Wes.
So Commissioners, good morning. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk to you about our supplemental budget. I know this is very important. So just the bottom line up front, right up front, what I'm asking is two parts. The first part is I'm asking for $155,500 back from the $224,000 that's been reduced the past 2 years. So I'm only asking for a portion of that back, and we'll explain why we're asking for that. And then I'm asking for $135,199 for 3 additional employees. And I'll explain what we're asking for there. 2 of the employees are processors. They enter documents, we'll talk about that. And 1 employee is a court clerk. I need another court clerk to keep up with the workload that we have. We've been creative in my office. We've done a lot of things to make our office far more efficient and effective. We've been creative on our barcode scanning, on moving workflow. E-filing is killing it. I'll talk about that some more. That's a great success, but then that's compounding some of our workload issues because we're very efficient at it. And we can demonstrate some numbers for you on that one. And there's a lot of things that are going on with Blake. We're 2 years behind in Blake, but I asked you for $50,000. You gave me $50,000. I've given you back $52,000. I got $19,000 more coming back for you. I got $70,000 more after that coming back to you and refunding the county for the Blake that we're doing. So my office is handling all the Blake issues. We're doing that pretty efficiently too. So we're not asking for extra people for that like other counties have. We can do that in-house. We're trying to be as effective as we can with the workforce that we have. So a couple things. What my request will do is it'll enhance public safety by a long shot. Remember, protection orders are a huge issue. If something goes wrong in a protection order, that'll be a huge county liability. And so right now, we have programs in place to make sure that doesn't happen. Brand new laws have been passed. We got the uniform guardianship law, okay? And what we've done with that one is that we are in compliance with that one, even though it's a brand new law and very comprehensive. We have the brand new protection order and legislation in effect.
Here, just a second, we gotta make sure we
Hey,
get.
Commissioner.
There you go, Commissioner, you can have that one.
Friends, grab that one right there.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So
This is a whole lot better.
this one's short. Mine's only 5 pages, 5 slides. The brand new protection order legislation is extremely extensive. You've seen that. It's very comprehensive. They spent 2 years with House Bill 1320 and House Bill 1901. We are in compliance with both those laws that went into effect on 1 July with the things we've done in the past. I will give a shout out to the commissioners. I asked you 3 years ago for that protection order team. You funded that team for me, and that has been a huge win for the county. Our electronic filing system is crushing it. And I can tell you right now, and Josh will talk more about this, but right now we are averaging 39,500 documents, not sheets of paper, documents being filed per month. We had 41,563 last month. These are enormous amounts of documents coming in. And the timeline. So a concern I've been working on for 6 months with the court is that the governor is eliminating a lot of his emergency orders. But those aren't the ones that impact me the most. It's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and his court emergency orders. And they are now pulling back those emergency orders. When they do that, a lot of the legal system timelines, I know Mike's probably dealing with this too, a lot of those legal system timelines are gonna fall back to what they were pre-COVID. And we have to meet those timelines. Otherwise, again, the county is subject to liability if someone's not getting their documents before the court in a timely manner. Another problem about that, and I'm causing some of this, is in criminal. We have a very high criminal load. I'll talk a little bit about that here. That is about a 48-hour turnaround to get these people out of jail, into first appearance, and then make a decision on what to do with them. If we aren't getting the paperwork done in time, they continue those cases. That's costing you money in the jail. That's costing us people staying in jail that probably should have been released. So these are issues we got to make sure we don't subject the county to, don't set the county up on. So we're tracking these numbers real close. And so those are the reasons why I'm asking for these requests. So let's go ahead and skip the next 2 pages in your brief. Gina, skip the next 2 pages. So let's just go into the M&O budget. That's what I started off with. Skip the next one. Perfect. So what we're gonna do is I can talk about the maintenance and operations first, and then I'll go into the personnel discussion. Go ahead, Josh.
Thank you, Tim, and good morning, everyone. First off, let me just say thank you all for gathering together to listen to what we have to say. at the end of the day, we need some help, and that's kind of the purpose for laying thing out, is to show you what we're doing and what we use the funds for, as well as kind of a comparison to some other departments that have similar requirements to us, to show you what we've been doing to operate and kind of what we need. So the first of which is office supplies. This is huge for our office, and that's primarily because we facilitate copies. So when you think about the total volume that goes through, I pulled one code for what my processors use when they receive it, or the cashiers when money comes through. And just for regular copies, in 2021, we brought in over $86,000 in just regular copies alone. Now, when you think about how that offsets in terms, that's paper, that's ink, that's all kinds of maintenance that goes into it and what we need to be able to facilitate. We also maintain a variety of stamps for every document that comes through. Those are all custom and have to be built or ordered. And it may surprise you, but sometimes people break, lose them, or there are items where they have to replace multiple times throughout the year. Our case stamps, for example, the one that we typically use costs about $100 for one, and it has broken twice already just from volume of impact on all the documents we see. You'll see on one of the other items that we filed 41,000 sets of documents last month. So you think about that and everyone needing a case stamp on it as well. Check stock, huge and hugely expensive. That's an item that every time the court makes a decision and we have to send out a payment from the registry and trust, it's coming from, we prepare those checks. And that's an item that we have to maintain check stock. We have to make sure that we have the envelopes to be able to support it, and then envelopes in general in turn back. So you have the check, how do you get it to the next person? Well, you have to have one that fits in it, and you have to have one that has either the logo on it, or you're paying someone per hour that they have to actually fill out the envelope itself. That's also combined, and I put postage on the same page as well, because unfortunately, over the last 2 years, we've actually had our postage supply completely taken away. And that is an item that we've been struggling to manage, because again, the court makes a decision that we have to send out a payment. We now have put together the stock for the check. We've got everything together of what has to be mailed out. Well, now we're sending it. And every time we're sending that out, we're taking a deficit for each one. There's also been new requirements as well for postage and the cost of that going up. I'm sure you've heard plenty about it. But also for S-Cheat in 2023, there's going to be a new requirement that the documents, when we communicate with possible owners of S-Cheat, that we have to send all the documents first class. So we're expecting that cost to go up as well. I, again, just listed some of the kind of compensatory costs that you might see some of our departments. So the treasurer uses $68,000 for postage alone. The auditor, $36,000 in supplies alone. And again, we produce those copies that are going out. And as you can see, what we've recouped back from just regular copies, if you're talking about items that are certified, that's in our $86,000 on top of it.
So a question for you, so on the, when you say similar offices and they're giving those amounts, are those amounts that they're asking for increases on?
That's what their current budget is.
Okay, and so what is your current budget on?
We were dropped from $76,000 to $18,000.
And how?
What year did that happen?
Last year.
Throughout the COVID years, 20 and 21, they were reducing our budget slowly on these various items that we're gonna bring up today, just these 5 items. Everything else we can live with, because we probably can live with it, but these 5 right here is where we're getting the increases. The other 15 items, line items that were reduced, we can work around those. Those are easy. These right here are impacting us.
So you're saying it went from 76,000 in 2020 and 2020, or 2021?
2021 to 2022.
So is that something that would have been in the detailed line item budget, Gary, that lowered it? So what, I mean, can somebody refresh us to why? I honestly don't know. I'll admit I don't remember what happened 12 months ago when we were debating why that specific line item would have gone down that much.
I'm trying to refresh my memory too. I think we worked in collaboration with identifying potential cost savings.
Right.
And at that time, Tim was very good in saying, we won't spend this money or whatever at this time, but we might need it in the future. He's approached a lot of these problems that way where he's cut back and then if he needs it, then he comes and says, well, I need it now, so as to not overinflate his budget. So he's been very good to work with on that regard, and so I suspect that that's the situation.
Yeah, these are projections that we were looking at, and we didn't think the cost would be that high. We were a bit off. The costs were higher. But again, there's a total of 21 different line items, 15, we're gonna keep it the way it is.
Just to give you some context too, their submitted preliminary 23 budget was $3.3 million. And their last year's adopted budget was $3.271 million. So very, very close to what it was adopted in 22. Their supplemental requests for, in total, for M&O is $155,000, and the personnel related supplemental request is $135,000. So just to kind of set the context and the table of what Tim's asking for and what he's explaining here in terms of his workload level and his changing dynamic within his department.
Okay, Commissioner French, you have a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So just so that I'm tracking with you, Tim, I'm not challenging anything. I just want to make sure I'm tracking. So if your budget last year was 18,000,
This year, it's 18,000, I'm sorry.
for this year, it's 18,000. So are you requesting 22,000 on the top of the 18, which would bring it to
Yes.
40?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
And the 6,500.
And then the 6,500 on top of that would be in addition to what your current postage.
Exactly, so the numbers are,
About 58,000.
right, the numbers we're showing you today are the increases that we're asking for, the actual value of the increase.
Okay, thank you.
And our current postage budget is 0, so it would be added to that.
We're making 6,500.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions about that slide or any of those items? All right, and we can go over to the next one. This one is based off of the fact that there aren't a whole lot of options to be able to add into a request for the particular coding for it. So this one is kind of accumulation of what our big line items are. And this really boils down to truly professional services. Professional services is a huge expense for us because it covers so many different categories. The first of which on there is banking fees. Over the last couple of years, our banking fees have also been reduced to 0. And we maintain the same types of accounts that you'll see with the treasurer's office, the same type of volume. Now that has been changed up a little because over the last year, I don't know if it was experimentation or the process with it, but it was moved over to a negative revenue line item versus an expense, which kind of changes a couple of the mechanics with it. But I reached out to Arthur Whitten at the request of the budget office for clarification with him, who then deferred it over to JJ Hernandez in the treasurer's office, who confirmed that this should actually be an expense versus a negative revenue line item. So as you see with the cost of what the treasurer goes through every year, they have $80,000 set aside for it, and we're going to be starting off with 0. We know that in particular, we can work anywhere between $24,000 plus. Again, it depends on the year and the volume that we have to go through, the amount of wires that have to be sent. This also covers a variety of fees as we continue to send items out. And also with banking fees, you also have kind of the offset with that too, which is armored carrier pickup. For our armored carrier pickup, that is an item that continues to grow in expense due to both inflation and the cost of gas. We've seen it grow by over $300 a month since December. And it's expected to continue to go up depending on how some of the labor negotiations go with the variety of armored carriers. So that expense will continue to drive forward.
And are we coordinating that cost with the other departments?
In fact, that's a good point. So talk a bit about, we're working with the treasurer's office to revamp the Loomis contract, which will be substantially lower for us. Why don't you talk a bit about what we're doing with that contract negotiations right now?
That was an item where that is a contract that we are doing what we can to have it cut back as much as possible, and including opening it up to other vendors and trying to think outside of the box so that we can save the county money as a whole. Based off of the fact that, so I came from banking before this. So when I see something as a banking related fee, it kind of rubs me the wrong way that there's a way to kind of drive a particular item down. So seeing that there are pickups on multiple places within the courthouse and they are all different types of armored carrier, we are trying to work to try and consolidate those contracts into one and then invoice the item so that we can pay, or whoever would maintain the main contract, a much more substantially lower price because it would be a supplemental pickup versus a completely separate contract. And that we've got several bids that are out there now. In mid 2023 is when the Loomis contract would be open for us to either begin to debate down with them or to open it up to take on some the other bids that we have from the other vendors right now, which there are significant savings if we can do that.
Because I'm assuming the treasurer, they have them coming every day.
Yes.
Well, the treasurer, us, the auditor, and who's the other one? Was there four?
Well, it depends on, and this is kind of why the scope is open larger, because a lot of individuals think the armored carriers are specifically just for the cash. It's really to be able to maintain, to be able to sign off insurance-wise, the fact that a check is no longer in your possession. Because a part of that contract is the fact that you're getting it from point A to point B, and then now that vendor is responsible for making sure that it arrives at the processing facility, where that has kind of the caveat is you pay for it because it goes from secure location 1 to secure location 2. So we've opened that up to find out how many departments within the courthouse are actually using any form of armored carrier.
So again, this is one of those creative things that we just spotted, working with the budget office on how to consolidate some costs for the county.
I would think we'd want to have purchasing take a look at that and come up with a contract, and if we need to place a resolution that services that go into all these other departments need to be centralized, or at least, yeah. Even though they're going into other electeds, but we still gotta be looking out for the best for the county. So that may be a policy we need to put together.
Yeah, we'd like somebody else to own the contract and just, we call it, we'll just be paying a fee for a person to run the contract.
Have you guys engaged with procurement yet on this?
I've engaged with purchasing actually since February of last year to try and ascertain, 1, the contract itself, and 2, to get specifics. Unfortunately, it was an item that's set to auto renew, and there's a set period of time where you have to communicate for that to happen. So it's been rolling over for quite a bit.
And when's the auto renewal? Are we within the timeframe to?
That's mid 2023. I already have purchasing set with reminder January 1st to have a letter sent out to Loomis to let them know that we're opening it up for bids to begin.
Is that just for yours, or is that for the other?
That's just for ours. We're still waiting to receive feedback from everyone. The treasurer has been very open. Krista Rice has been telling us the features that they use. They use Garda, which has a bit of a cost savings with it as well. The full scope, again, is dependent on how much we can bundle together.
It'd be great for a county lead, to put all these departments together, because we can save some good money on this.
Well, yeah, when you have economies of scale and if there's 4 different pickups,
Yeah.
one contract's gonna be much more beneficial than 4.
Absolutely. Vault servicing is also listed on there. It's been a number of years since we've had a full servicing on the vault. Anyone that has been to the clerk's office and see that we actually have a number of vaults and a number of locking mechanisms that we keep things. And again, when you think of vaults, you think of the fact that we're retaining and holding cash. It's actually far more than that in the clerk's office, because we also maintain items that are being held for cases, or if there's, well, it's waiting for different types of storage. So those items, they're very, very old vaults. And again, that was on day 1 when I came in and saw kind of or heard the sounds that some of the gears were making. I brought it up in our first meeting that we need to find some revenue to be able to get some work done on it. Because if you have to replace a vault door, that is very, very, very expensive.
We carry 2 vault doors, one for finance, one for the exhibit locker. That's your guns, your drugs, your money, and that type of stuff. So with the 2 doors that we need to, they're old, they're very old. But we don't want them to get locked and we can't open them, because apparently to get somebody to come in and open them for you is a pretty substantial cost. How much you say that was?
If they have to drill it,
Yeah.
it can be $4,000 plus. Depending on the type of drill they need and the time that they're there. Also, as you can see on here, we have listed staffing agency. So staffing agency, Tim will get into more of the details with that when we're talking about the positions itself. But this is kind of twofold. The fact that our office is statutory and the fact that we don't have a lot of choice in what we do. We have to make sure courtrooms are properly staffed so that they can run. By the same token, we have to make sure that processing is not delayed for any reason. So the staffing agencies are our go-to if we can't fill a role fast enough. So it's an item that if we have to bring in help because of we have a vacancy, they guarantee to get a body there. And I can tell you that sometimes it does take a while to fill it. So we try to offset by being able to fill our positions utilizing the traditional means and posting. And then we offset that with what we have to do to kind of triage the event to make sure that we don't end up in any kind of legal item based off the fact that we can't get a courtroom staffed or we can't get processing taken care of. And again, that'll be on Tim's slide, kind of the specific breakdowns of how expensive that can get if we have to do it. Just to kind of put things in perspective, the agency that we use is reduced down to about as much as we can get reduced down for the time being. But a court clerk that makes $14.55 an hour, we're paying them over $20 an hour for the same person, plus a conversion fee of $1,500 per person. And we have to be able to maintain them for 2 months of that.
But to speak to that a little bit, so what does that extra cost mean? So when you have a temporary staffing employee, that means that temp agency is paying all of their taxes. They're paying any medical that may be needed under the ACA. So if they're working an average of more than 30 hours per week through an agency, the agency will offer them that medical. It pays for their workers' compensation rate and any claim in the event that they are injured on our property while they're working for us as a staffer. So that percentage is really normal when you're working with an agency, similar to even when we look at our loaded cost of salary, right? There's about a 50% multiplier on it on average that we're using right now. So a staffing agency has the exact same cost that we have to cover, but on their side of the fence. So that's why you see the markup on those positions. You can essentially assume it's the loaded cost of an employee.
I also have listed on there work crews, the general maintenance that we do, and also e-filing in general, because we are still very much in the process of building it. We've made huge progress with it, and it has the potential to change everything. And so we are working very digitally to make sure that we do everything right, and we take the feedback that we get to be able to create a program in an environment that the digital element is well respected. I have listed in here some of the other departments and what they utilize. Again, this is what they had posted for their budget as existing. HR, $82,000 for professional services. Treasurer uses $136,000. Risk management, $786,000. And for banking alone in the treasurer's office, they use $80,000.
So Jason, just to clarify on that other $96,000, we're talking about a change in accounting policy that accounts for 80,000 of that, just because we're moving it from a revenue reduction down to an expense line.
Right.
So for comparative purposes, that nets out to another 16,000 versus 96,000 plus.
Correct.
It's a budget neutral, that move is a budget neutral impact.
Yeah.
So 80,000 of this.
Yeah, so it's just an addition of 16.
That was the direction we got from the treasurer, so.
Any other questions about that slide? Okay, so then we can go over to the third page, which is overtime and advertisement publication. So overtime is an item, again, based off of the statutory items that we have. If we need to have teams and crews working to be able to get caught up or to prevent items, that is what we put into place. And when we have our teams working, we're working through Saturday. We are working lunch hours, we're staying after hours. In 1 week alone, we did accrue $10,000 for just 1 week trying to get everything caught up. And that's diligent work by the processors and other groups involved. Now, how that is impacted is going to be very much based off of the response that you have to the additional positions. But the number that we arrived at was 10,000 was historically looking over the past 7 years and what we actually have spent being fully staffed and even throughout the pandemic. That's the number that we're able to arrive as being the responsible balance with items, that if we're able to maintain a fully staffed environment and the court items are held in check to a certain degree, utilizing $10,000 is an item that either can grow on or something that could be held in check. Again, with the processors as the example, 1 week we used $10,000 in overtime for them alone. The advertisements is.
Sorry, just a quick question.
Go ahead.
And I'm from HR, just kind of wrapping my brain on the staffing side. So we have had, Jim and I, we've talked about significant openings this year in your team. And so is the 10,000 in the event that you are fully staffed, you would still assume that you are going to be running a rate of overtime at that rate? Or do you think that when you're fully staffed, that would actually be able to come off? So is it more of a contingency, so to speak, or is it truly a budget need as you're looking at your headcount?
Right now, it's a budget need, depending on what the decision is for these other processors that I'm asking for. I have a total of 14 processors. We'll talk more about that, but right now, the workload coming in, they're on the queue every day, moving these documents around. But the volume coming in, we can't keep up with the volume that's coming in right now. That's our biggest problem. And we got it pretty, yeah.
So I understand that we have a number of new judges and court commissioners. Is some of that volume that you're processing related to the fact that they're new and they are inundated you? Or is it because we really do have an increase in demand on the courts?
From what we're looking at and what we're seeing coming in, we think it's an increase on the demand of the courts. Protection orders are skyrocketing. We're at 33 protection orders a day. But again, that team you helped me put in place 3 years ago has it locked down tight, and we're doing real well on that. I mean, again, God forbid we have a mistake, someone gets killed or injured. But what we're seeing now is our increase in, we have a heavy, we outpaced Oklahoma's by 200 new cases a month in criminal. We outpace most people in civil commitment, dependency,
And by we, you're saying the county does.
Spokane County. Yeah, in fact, I have my cheat sheet here, but it just.
How does this relate to the volume pre-COVID?
The volume by cases has increased, by cases. So we're but not, I mean, it's probably by 100 more cases each month, but we're trying to get it electronic so we can move it faster. We're real close to doing that. We've got a lot of good things in place with the workflow, and then we now got the court, believe it or not, we got the court onto electronic signatures now. Okay, so this will speed our process up. And again, the biggest challenge we have is just meeting these timelines and make sure we're getting folks in and out first appearance, so they're not sitting in jail waiting, or there aren't continuances.
And just to add on to the overtime item, our budget, that was another item that was impacted. It was reduced down to 0 for overtime as well. So we're working from a 0 factor on that one. And then for the same item for advertisements, that's one that I actually had to take a second look at because we don't advertise necessarily for items, but that's just the verbiage that's for it. This is actually for dependencies, and we're required by statute to publish them. This item was also reduced to 0 for us when in reality we spend over $20,000 a year in publishing those items. Now, this is one that has the potential to actually increase even more because of the impact of the pandemic. So you think about everyone that's moved during the pandemic, very few people are in the same city, town, whatnot. Our biggest expense is when we have to begin the longer range items to begin the publication that's required by statute. And when we have to publish in localities like Alaska, or if we have to publish in New York with the dependency information, we're required by statute that we get the best deal that they have, and they're not allowed to charge us extra, but it gets very expensive very, very quickly.
You remember last year, the clerks took this to the legislature to get this changed. This is an attorney general directive to the county clerks to publish these documents so they can find where these folks are at when we have dependency hearings. So we asked that since the attorney general is directing it and running it, they should be paying for it. And they pay for it in some counties, but most counties, they don't pay for it. But we couldn't get this past the legislature last year. And it's 2 years in a row we've tried to get it passed. They won't budge on it. The state shoots us down every time, or they win the argument in testimony. So it's just a cost we have to deal with right now.
And again, just listing some of the other offices that have items that are statutory that might be close. The auditor's office for overtime has $76,000 allocated. Prosecuting attorney, $11,000 allocated. For publications, the prosecuting attorney uses and has a budget of $53,000. We're not asking for anything near that size. Again, looking at what we're actually using to try and keep things in check, and historically over the last couple of years to find out what our true volume and what our true cost is. That's all for mine, Tim.
Okay. Any questions on the M&O? Yeah, Mike.
Just on the publications, are you talking about in newspaper publications that we're talking? It seems that the county would have a contract or some system for doing that rather than.
What we do locally, but not if they have to
Not at
publish
this level here.
outside of the area.
Okay.
Correct.
Just wasn't sure for that, okay.
And it's expensive.
Yeah, it is.
Wait, just open the spokesman review up, you'll see those full page ads.
Yeah.
That's what we're required to do by law. So that's the reason why I'm asking for that $155,500 additional dollars of the previous $244 that we were allocated that's gone down. Again, we're only asking the $155,500 back for these reasons right here. All right, Ms. Gina, just bump back to my number 2 slide. We'll talk about people
It's
very
actually
quickly.
Ron that's doing it.
Oh,
for
I'm
you.
sorry. I thought Gina was doing it. Thank you, Ron. Okay. Our first request is for 2 court processors. The total is $92,646. What a processor does is they enter the documents as they come in either electronically or by paper. Right now, they are entering 1,900 documents a day. Remember, I used to talk to you guys about 9,000 sheets of paper a day? Well, we're at 1,900 documents a day now, 41,000 some odd documents a month. The average is about 39,000, but it's increasing. I gave you the full chart so you can take a look at how it ebbs and flows. But the average is 39,500. So we have a lot of documents coming in. The challenge here is I got to make sure I get them in. I got to get them into the system, because if I don't, that causes delays for the court. And I don't want to be the one causing the delays. I was talking about the hourglass. The attorneys in public are on the top of the hourglass. That skinny part in the middle is me. Bottom of the hourglass is the courts. Everything's flowing through. We're efficient and working well. The court system is up and running. Now we're 3 years back on jury trials. We're 2 years back on Blake. So we have a lot of catching up to still do. But if I'm causing delays, especially in the criminal side of the house, that's where the continuances are coming in. So I can't point at the court on that one. Part of that problem is me. So I can't get the documents turned around fast enough. So we get the information sheets and they're due within 24 hours into the system. And we can't get them in fast enough because there's hundreds of them coming in every day. So we got to speed that process up. What I did was realign the teams. 3 people do criminal, 3 do civil, 3 do family law. And then each of those 3 teams pick up probate, adoption, guardianship, and paternity, which ought to be a separate team, but it's not. Civil commitment, I have 1 person that does civil commitment. I have 1 person that does all case type 7, dependencies, truancies, RDs, youth at risk, children in needs, and I have 1 person that does juvenile. So workload-wise, I need 2 more processors to even this out. But what do processors do? They'll probably go part-time. They'll probably do probate and guardianship and then support the criminal team. And the other one will do adoptions and paternities and support the civil team. And that'll give me a half a body for those 2 big teams, criminal and civil, and then a half a body to do the other case types. I think that will enable us to be a lot faster, enable us to keep up. So that's why I'm asking for the processors. This local court rule 79, I have to adhere to that. That's where my challenge is at. So that's processors, 2 of them. Ron, next slide, please. A court clerk, you know the challenges with court clerk. So statutorily, I have to have a clerk in all the courtrooms. You know, we've modernized and done as much remote capability as we can. Our civil commitment clerks aren't traveling around to the 15 sites. We're saving the county a ton of money now. We built those court hearing rooms with the COVID money, and we do all our hearings remotely in those rooms with our court clerks in there for civil commitment. Again, trying to save money, make things as efficient as we can. But the court runs 20 dockets a day. They have a pool of 14 pro temps. So when the judge is sick or on vacation or not available, same thing for a court commissioner, they always fill that seat. That seat never goes empty. Problem is, I try to put clerks on vacation, or when I have clerks who are sick, I don't have a pool to pull from. Talking with Ashley, the clever thing we did was we brought in the Robert Half people. That's my pool, but you heard Josh brief it. It's an expensive pool, but it does enable us to keep doing our statutory duties while we bring them in. They're not aligned with the union, so there are hours to look at. They can look at us. If they're really, we get 60 days with them. If they're performing really well, we'll hire them. Now we have a trained person, but it costs us $1,500 to hire them out from the temp company. So running wise, I think my numbers were right around 11% vacancies pretty consistently, which is not bad compared to a lot of folks in the county. I've been running pretty consistently around 11%. The majority of that is court clerks, because as you well know, everybody needs my court clerks. I say I had the best training program. I think Mike will back me up on this one. You got 12 Superior Court judges that could pick the cream of the crop for any judicial assistant they want in the system. 5 of those judicial assistants are my former court clerks. She has 7 court coordinators, that's her supervisors. 4 of them are my former court clerks. So I know my people are trained very well. And the Attorney General now has 6 of my court clerks. So, and same problem for Larry, same problem for Cullen. You know, Attorney General's office has stopped hiring now, so we got a break. I am full up in all my offices but court clerks. I'm down 3 clerks right now. So the other challenge I have though is that when you run these extra series, these special sets that they've been running lately, bringing in their pro tem to do one morning of special sets, I don't have a clerk to fill that special set. That's where I have a challenge. You also know we supported the state by sending a clerk down to Stoughton for that big trial. We also supported the state by sending a clerk to Grant County for their big trial. So we help out because we had the most experienced clerks. But I'm short. I'm always struggling every day with clerks, trying to move them around. So I'm asking for one more court clerk to give me 24 clerks versus 20 judicial officers. 12 judges, 8 court commissioners. I have 23 clerks right now. I'm asking for a 24th. That gives me 4 extra clerks to work with. The 3 I have right now, vacation, FMLA, or sick, I'm right there. I'm 20 and 20. I have no wiggle room. And I need 1 extra clerk to give me just a little bit of breathing room.
So Tim, you know that I put together a task force, basically look at the criminal side, not the civil side. And I know you and I will have a conversation about what do you think the impact's gonna be to your office for catching up those backlog cases, you know, back up within time standards? Is that gonna be a heavy burden on your office, or are you staying current with them already, or, you know?
Well, we're struggling to stay current. I mean, we are breaking even every day, just hanging on. And the courts are starting earlier now. Some of the judges are starting at 8 o'clock, so that's overtime for me. That's part of that overtime discussion. So that's a half an hour of overtime. Judges are going into lunch. That's another problem I'm having because now the union's on my case about that. So we have to work that one out. That's for me to take care of. And they're running later in the evening. But with the court clerks, I have 24. I think I can hang in with them much better. Not talking about a 13th judge. That'll be a whole separate discussion when we get to that point. Just talking about right now, I'll give me 24 to 20, but those 2 processors, Mike, will get me the criminal paper. That processor spending a half a day doing the criminal paperwork on Monday morning, the information sheets. We should have that stuff entered and ready to go to the court by the time they roll in the first appearance. That's what we're showing numbers wise.
And what would you attribute the continuances to that? Is there a lot of continuances?
I'm causing some of those continuances. It isn't all the court. It's me causing. It isn't all the attorneys.
And this is
I'm causing that.
This is not a fault finding.
Yeah, no, I'm causing it
sense
because
of
I can't get the paperwork in a timely manner to them, so they don't bring an information sheet to the hearing. Then the hearing has to be continued.
Okay.
The court commissioner, especially Stein, Commissioner Stein, he's a constitutional commissioner. He does the first appearances. His cases will get continued because I can't get the paperwork done fast enough. And I got 3 people doing it. So, and again, I got 3 doing that. I got 3 doing civil. I got 3 doing family law. I mean, we can't, I can't pull people and wait, as we call it in the military, wait the main effort, because then I subtract someplace else and I fall behind there. That's what it goes back and forth. Okay. I'm on time in criminal, I'm behind in civil. And so I created that brand new department, that electronics records division. I created that brand new department with a supervisor. That's why we're doing so well and doing real well with electronic filing. I just need to look at more resources.
So this additional court clerk and stuff does not include what would be required if the board authorized the 13th.
It does not.
And stuff. So if you were to, if theoretically the board were to authorize the 13th Superior Court judge, how many clerks does it take to support one judge?
The current ratio by state level is 2.5. I'd ask for just 2. Because when I got this one, I'd ask for just 2. I don't need a half a clerk. I'll go with just 2 more clerks to cover that one judge.
Okay. And how many bailiffs does it take, or corrections officers to do transport?
2.
2, so we got 4 people for one judge. What else?
Well, you would need a court reporter.
Court
And
reporter,
you need a
5.
judicial assistant.
So you're six additional staff for that one judge, assuming that we had a courtroom. And one of the things that we talked about with Superior Court was, since we don't have an extra courtroom, what would happen if you ran a night court? And what does that do to you in terms of the ability to staff it?
Oh, I would just talk to the union and I already have an agreement with the union on a flex schedule. I already have a flex schedule in my office, and I also telecommute in my office. Using all these things to make it so we can get our job done. I would just ask for a flex schedule for that one court clerk.
Well, we'd have to negotiate impact, so that impacts work conditions. It likely also would end up with some sort of an enhanced pay, right? Typically, you see people that work night shift hours end up with a night shift differential. So I appreciate Tim's tenacity, and I would just speak with the union, but there's a lot of levers behind the scenes that we would have to impact bargain over that would likely end up increasing a lot of rates, seniority, bidding, recruitment. It's a big ask. We could get there, but it's not an overnight flip the switch, and it will cost us money to do it.
Well, even if you could run the court at night, you still need chambers for the judge, and we don't have any room for that. So I'm just trying to get my arm around, this ask. They say, well, it's just, the state will pay half of it. No, they won't. They don't even pay a fraction of it. But the real burden is, one, we don't have a courtroom, and anyway, thank you.
All the supporting staff.
Yeah, one more piece I would
supporting staff.
say is also risk management did not take that into consideration when we rolled up our security cost contract changes that we're looking at. So that would be another
so that's
piece that
another
was
cost.
not included in that presentation for you guys.
If we did it.
If we did it, yep, that was not even taken into consideration with the extended hours into the night court.
Well, yeah, because now you've got additional security at the front of so you've got to include that as part of the cost?
We would need to. That was not part of the discussion that Steve presented to me.
Okay. And we thought it was easy.
No, we didn't think it was easy.
No,
I just state that the state pays half the judge's salary.
Certain people think it's easy.
Not all of us. Yeah.
So I mean, we easily, on an annual basis, it could be easily $1 million in just staffing and additional costs, not including the capital cost to build a courtroom. Okay, thank you.
I think all the modernization we have done has been very effective. Those drop boxes, electronic stamps, electronic filing, barcode scanning, let the workflow we put in place, his debit credit card transactions, and people use debit credit cards all the time now. All this modernization is doing great for us. I mean, we're hanging in there. I just don't want to keep slowing the system down periodically each week. I don't want to keep doing that. I need to so we get a little more efficient, because we're behind. It's not like we're ahead. That's our problem. COVID put us behind.
That's right.
So we got to clean that backlog up, and we got to do it. And once the Supreme Court Justice's, Chief Justice's emergency order goes away, that's going to tighten the timelines back up pretty sharply. We got to be on top of that, just so someone can't come back and say, I can't get my kid because my documents went before the court. I just lost my kid. I'm suing you. They can't sue the court, but they can sue me. So that's what we're looking at doing. I mean, numbers wise, we've done all the tactics, techniques, procedures. We streamlined everything. And then next thing is resources, equipment, people. I got all the equipment in place. We've done everything we can equipment wise. The one thing we will do is move all our documents to digital archives next year. And digital archives will handle all the paying for documents and all that stuff that people ask for, which will take the burden off of us and reduce our costs even more. But we have to make that contract and do all that. The only thing I got left now is resources. I need some people to watch these queues as these documents are coming in. We're at 20% right now electronic filing. The max Pierce and King ever got was 23% before they made it mandatory. So we're right there. So the next thing we'll do is make it mandatory for the attorneys. Now eliminate even more paper and more files. So that'll be our next step. And then we won't charge a fee, but I gotta talk with risk management about that, because remember in district court, when they charged a fee, they got taken to the cleaners on that one and they had to stop the entire program statewide because the public defenders challenged them on charging a fee. But in Superior Court, nobody's challenged it yet. Yeah. And that's all we have. Those are our two asks.
I think what's unique about Tim's team when we're looking at positions is he is one of the, I think the only one, that we are truly using a staffing agency to ensure that the vacancies that he does have are filled. So while they're not our headcount on the Spokane County books, we are filling that headcount. So when I am looking at the vacancies, I don't truly look at Tim as having vacancies that can swap in for some of these positions, which other people have asked that, right? Do you really need these positions? They are filled, they're just with staffing agency employees right now. And so I am not able to ask him, and we've talked through this a lot, if there's an ability to flex, because he really is working those hours, so to speak.
Thanks, Tim. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you all.
Right on time.
Yeah, perfect.
Let's get up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I know. Hygiene break.
Hi.
John, how are you?
Hi, good, nice to see you again.
You need another chair here?
Hi.
Good to see you.
Here, let's.
No, I think just the three of us, so.
Okay.
Okay, we're still being recorded, so we're not officially on a break, just so you know. I didn't officially
Good.
do this, so, yeah.
Just left.
Everyone just left. so,
Evaporated.
Okay, so we'll just wait if you're welcome to chit chat, but just keep that we're still.
I think Mike Sparber's coming over.
Yes.
Oh, is he? Okay,
He just took
okay.
a break too.
He just,
He needed a break too?
everybody just disappeared, so.
Well, good morning.
Good morning, how are you doing?
Very well, very well.
Good, how was your ceremony the other night? I apologize.
It went great. It went really, really well. Yeah, it was first one since COVID, so 2.5 years of catching up. But yeah, I think it went well.
Yeah.
Scott was there. Thank you for being there.
Yeah, they did a great job. Just a good opportunity to recognize employees and the work they do in our detention services office as a whole and department as a whole. Just, they work hard. They're under challenging conditions, and just the ability to have that opportunity for Don and the team to recognize the group and the good work that they're doing was great.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I was sad to miss it. I had to be in Ellensburg for a WASAC board meeting, so,
Nope.
because I've been there in the past, and so.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So half the awards are life-saving awards. So you're like, saved a life. I mean, that's half the awards we have. So yeah, it's pretty impactful.
So that may be something maybe we want Jared to do, just kind of a little press release on the award ceremony and let all the awards that were given out. So, because I think it's worth, celebrating, all the hard work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, good luck. We'll get together. I put it on a 9 font. He was trying to send in.
There he is, okay.
He's testing your vision.
Okay, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourselves for the record and get going.
Don Hooper, Interim Director for Detention Services.
Bryce Miller, Finance Manager for Detention Services.
Darren Lehman, Lieutenant for Detention Services.
Thank you, gentlemen, and I'll let you.
And I will go down, this is my first time, so I don't know how much, too little, too much, but.
Well, and I'll let you know, Commissioner French does have to leave around 11:30.
Okay.
So if you're not finished, keep going,
Sure.
and he will.
I'll catch up.
Well, a lot of this is what we do, and I think everybody at this table knows what we do. So first slide, Gina, actually go ahead and go to the next slide. So, and how about the next one? One more, perfect. Just all the things we do, take care of it, all the inmates' basic needs while they're in custody with us, so.
Get it go through it if you want to.
So, you know, booking, take care of their medical, that's a lot of what we're gonna be talking about, medical, mental health, services, housing, showers, hygiene, food service. I think those are a lot of the additionals we're gonna have is on food service. But basically, every need that inmate while in custody, we're taking care of them. We're basically a small city at both the facilities. So we take them out to medical appointments, we take them to other agencies throughout the state. A hospital visit in the middle of the night last night at 1 o'clock, get the call, they're going to the hospital in the middle of the night. So nothing ever stops there. The things we're going to talk about later on is meal service, 3 meals a day, both facilities, throughout all COVID, throughout all the challenges we dealt with, the meals never stopped. We can't order out the 900 meals tomorrow, you just can't order out, as well as we provide meals for juvenile detentions as well, so. Okay, next programs, in custody, partial confinement, work crews out of Geiger. We helped out with the fair just these last 2 weeks. We were told basically, long and short, that they couldn't do it without our work crews. They can't get enough work from the public. So our work crews out there, I don't know, 12-hour days for the whole length of the fair, helping out with those services. So electronic monitoring, work crew, work release, community garden project, same thing. We have, I don't know how many tons of vegetables we have, but we have an officer that takes care of all the programs. Just same thing, giving some people some life skills while they're in custody.
Is that out at Geiger?
Out of Geiger, yeah, they've created, Ted Topster's our officer in charge, super proud of it, more vegetables. He told us how many tons he put out, I didn't put it down on here, but just tons and tons of vegetables and just a sense of worth for inmates who are out there doing those things, so.
And those get donated to local, like St. Vincent de Paul, I believe, gets some of it, gets dispersed throughout the community.
It was in the tons of vegetables. I don't know how many, but it was tons, so. AGC, I don't know if we've done AGC, and I know this is one that's dear to your heart, AGC since COVID, maybe?
Yeah, I think they're hoping to get back in.
Yeah, and I don't know an update on that other than, I think it's been not long since we've done it, so.
Yeah, I think just because of the COVID restrictions, it was too hard to figure it out, so.
Yeah. So, the other classes we do, substance abuse disorder, Alcohol Anonymous, GD, breaking barriers, re-education, and faith-based programs while in custody. Most of that's done while out at Geiger downtown, just due to the same thing, the population and lack of classroom space. Very little of that's done downtown. It's all done out at Geiger. And then next page is population. I think we'll talk about, and when I was in here 4 months ago, maybe we talked about overpopulation in custody. Although the numbers are starting to creep up, they're not what they once were, and we've reduced the population out at Geiger about 100. So downtown's full at the end, Geiger's full, but a lot of that's based on we don't have eligible inmates to meet the requirements for Geiger's classification level. So we have about 190 out there. I didn't look this morning, but about 190. At one time, we were over 300 out at Geiger. There's very few misdemeanors in custody. Most of it's all felonies and violent felonies that classify for us out above a level 9 that we just don't feel comfortable having at Geiger. So it's something we've talked about for probably 10 plus years. Could we go one higher on the classification level at Geiger? And we've pushed it right to the level of our tolerance. We still get somebody go over the fence or everything now and then. It's just not, it's a medium to low custody level facility. So that's our tolerance level for risk out there. But it is creeping up. We're getting close to 150 within what we would be before COVID. And challenge right now is downtown has really long length of stays, the longest length of stays we've seen, even though the average length of stay isn't, you still get the 1 and 2 dayers in. We pulled the list and we had 2 inmates who were over 1,200 days in custody. We had like upwards of, I didn't write down all the figures, maybe did we get it here, Bryce? We had 80 that were here over a year. We had over 100 to 300 days was something in the 200 range. We're still playing a lot of catch up from our COVID time, a lot of trials outstanding, a lot of continuances. And so our real operating capacity, what's left, that are less than 100 days, is very little. And so that's what we're seeing. We're going to red light on almost at least a weekly basis, sometimes 2 and 3 times a week. So, because we just don't have a bed.
All right, now we're to the fun part. For me anyways. So 2023 budget summary here. So we've got a few different categories that I've broken down for us. You see salary and budgets, or salary and benefits is about 65% of our budget. That does not include about $2.5 million of a vacancy reduction that the budget office has entered. So really that number should be about $2.5 million more based on the new contracts that were out there. NAFCARE is our next biggest at 14%, 7.6 million. County cost allocation, kitchen, food and supplies, county liability, county IT, our Geiger lease, and then the remainder of 4 million-ish, about 7.3 is left over for all of our other various M&O operations.
Before you move on, you said the salary and benefits does not include 2.5 million of what?
It was a vacancy reduction.
Vacancy reduction, thank you.
And this is with the new contract rates and the COLA.
Correct. That's a yes?
Yep.
Yes. So yes, that should be 38 if it was fully on.
We have 35 unfilled corrections officer positions right now. 7 will be filled October 3rd, but unfilled.
Next slide. Next one is our comparison of 23 to 22. Shows increases in our percent change up or down. You can see the salary and benefits also, top line there is showing a 4.6% increase. Same reason, if we were to include the 2.5 million, we'd be in that 10 to 12%, which was the agreed upon salary and benefit increases for that. Again, same categories down the line. Overtime, we put in a 10% increase to our overtime to account for those salary increases. Go ahead.
And you're doing more overtime because of the reduction of.
Right, so less bodies
or-
for the overtime to spread to, so there's more double time than we've seen in quite some time also. And then with the new hires that Dawn was talking about, the new academy is 10 weeks long, where it used to be much shorter at 4. So we used to say 6 to 9 months was kind of our break-even point where they could start working overtime on their own. So now we're looking at more like 10 to 12 months before somebody's ready to go and work overtime to start those reductions. So the sooner we get them in, the sooner they get through all their training. All the way down the line, just a few reductions and some small increases along the way. You can see that remain the very bottom line there. We actually reduced, and it's not a whole lot, but about $100,000 reduction in our what I'll call controllable M&O. Next slide. This is our funding. This is how we calculate based on our city contracts, our city jail housing contracts. So we take our operating budget, we reduce that amount by our budgeted miscellaneous revenue, that's 7.6 million. Included in there is work crew, U.S. Marshals, DOC, other contracted agencies that are not our local city agencies. And so we reduce our total expenditures by that amount, and we get a net number. So at the bottom line, we get a $48 million projected amount that will be allocated out to our city agencies, including City of Spokane's Valley, Airway Heights, Cheney, Deer Park, Liberty Lake, and Medical Lake, along with the county. So that right box over there shows our 2021 average daily population. And that's how, when we are calculating our 2023 monthly flat bill that we send out, we use a completed year's worth of ADP against our budgeted net income, or our net cost, really, at the end of the day. So you can see county is approximately 84%, city 10%, valley approximately 5%, and then the other cities that I talked about 1% total together. So then we'll send out monthly bills at a flat rate over the course of 2023. And then at the end of 2023, we come back and true it up to what was actual expenditures, actual revenues, using actual percentages that they used during the year. If that makes sense. Next slide. Just the visualization of the different revenue sources that we will tap to fund the operations. Nothing too surprising here. The county is the biggest chunk of it, as 83% from the prior page drops down to 73% when we include the miscellaneous revenue, that 11% up there in the top corner. So it reduces those percentages that you would have seen on the prior page. So that's why there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. Next page. On to our supplemental budget requests. This is a list of items that we have submitted. Just do a quick kind of rundown and then we'll talk about each one. Geiger Kitchen Project, supplemental is $450,000. NAFCare adding a psychiatric registered nurse, $126,000. Quarterly medical audits, it's a $70,000 request. Inmate food, $363,000 request. Kitchen supplies, $55,000 request. Commissary resale items, $45,000 request, and fuel, $23,000 request. Next slide. So the first one on the list, which is the biggest one we have, is the Geiger Kitchen building. Like Dawn said, they prepare 3 meals a day for, right now, approximately 200 inmates out at Geiger. Historically, that's been up over 300. Just kind of varies depending on the people that qualify to go out there. They are also the backup for the jail inmates, in about 700 right now, but that kind of varies also historically. Right now, they are currently preparing all meals for every inmate at either facility. There's a kitchen remodel that started a couple weeks ago at the jail, so they are gutting the kitchen, and our Geiger staff is doing everything for jail inmates as well.
Just do some remodeling in the kitchen, not so like.
They did the floor, the piping below the floor, and then they resurfaced the floor. This is a full-blown remodel. Lieutenant Lehman may have a little bit more if you have additional questions on exactly what they're doing, but Gillett Facilities is coordinating it.
Yeah, a lot of the drain lines and everything underneath the floor, it literally collapsed and stuff, so they had to dig up the floor, replumb it and repour.
Yep. So this request is the Geiger Kitchen, which is significantly in trouble. We'll just say it that way. So the facility was built in 1952, so we are at the 70-year mark for this building and all of its systems and plumbing and electrical. It's concerning. It's very concerning. It could go at any time. Any one of those components could go. So this is a project that Senior Director Sparber has been working with Ken Moore on for some time. But we can, Mike, if you want to jump in and give anything else, there's one more slide that I had for the options right after this, if you want to.
Basically, the kitchen out there is in horrible repair. it's outlived its life out there. The interior equipment is still in good repair. Some of it's been, newly purchased and so forth along the way, but the infrastructure itself has fallen apart. And we did have somebody come in, Will Dan is the name of the company that came in and gave us kind of an estimate of what it would cost to, do a retrofit to it. And so along in that conversation, it came out around $5 million. And as you're well aware, these are buildings we're tearing down anyway when we vacate the property. So with that in mind, I also looked at some temporary options, which would be a mobile trailer that would be set up on location that could also prepare the food that we could take off at the end of the, at the period if we moved off the property. So go ahead, Bryce.
Okay,
Yeah.
next slide, please. So here are the two options that we were just talking about here. So option one is kitchen trailers. There's a company out of California that rents fully stocked semi-trailers, for better description of it, that are complete kitchens inside. They're a minimum 5-year lease, and those are the costs associated with it. The lease for the trailers themselves was approximately $200,000 a year for the lease, and then in year one, there's estimated $250,000 of one-time expenditures for hookup of sewer, power, everything else, all the other infrastructure hookups that would come along with that. So over that 5-year period, an estimated $1.25 million for those kitchen trailers. Option two for the retrofit is, as Mike said, approximately $5 million, which is a complete remodel of it. We would expect to get 20 plus years out of a new kitchen building for better or for worse. Next slide is a diagram that we received from, it's pretty hard to read. A diagram that we received from the company that does the semis. So this is kind of how the setup would be. They're proposing 4 trailers with all the various kitchen equipment and dishwashing setup with all the ramps that would come along with it. So that's kind of what it would look like, 4 side by side with openings to get in and out of each trailer for that purpose. Next slide. And I'm going to hand this off to Lieutenant Lehman to talk about this one.
Okay, I oversee medical and mental health services since becoming a lieutenant. And part of one of the goals I was given up front was to make sure we stayed in compliance with the contract. NAVCare was doing what they were supposed to on their end. And I'll get into the second part of that, which is the monitoring of that and the auditing of it. But one of the areas that we saw in the beginning, we saw a gap between what our county mental health staff were providing and then what the psych NP, which is part of the contract under NAVCare. We have a psych NP that provides the medication part for those mental health patients. But there was a gap in between there where the mental health, medical, dental services for these people who are mental health patients weren't getting care as quick as they could because that psych NP was just overwhelmed. Everything that was getting forwarded to her for the medication part of it was overwhelming her. And so the initial proposal was we need a second MP. We did some shifting of the staffing matrix of it, and we got a few more hours added into there. But to get another psych NP would be a significant cost. Something that I'm not against, but that would be a rework of the contract. To bridge that gap before we got there, I worked with NAVCare on what we could do to shorten those lengths where the psych NP was being able to see and triage these folks. And we came down to something, this registered nurse who has a psych background, so it's a psych RN. And they proposed this at free cost to the county as a trial basis. They've never done it within NAVCare before any of their sites, but they want to start here in Spokane because of the dynamic of how our contract's set up. So in January of this year, they were able to find somebody here locally who fit that criteria. We implemented it, and it's been hugely successful in bridging that gap. And this psych RN is seeing about 80 to 90 patients 3 times a week. And it's those patients are the ones that are most critical, most acute. There are segregated inmates those are the ones you're going to see have more problems, so they're segregated, probably likely because of their mental health, or they just can't survive in a general populations scenario. So we're seeing they're getting seen more frequent, they're getting their medications, we're making sure they're compliant on that stuff. Any medical stuff that comes up during that time, it's getting handled in a lot quicker, more timely fashion. So we're seeing healthier patients because of that, and less ongoing problems with some of these people who need a higher level of care. But that's due to sunset at the end of this year, that trial period. We're kind of evaluating it. The proposal is like $126,000, I think, for 2023, and then the contract ends in 2024, so there's about half of that for 2024. Right now, I believe it's come to your level that NAFCare has proposed some other changes in there. We're operating on a contract that was done in 2016 that included a staffing matrix that we believe to be the right thing for the facility at the time. But we're now 6 years into it, and things have changed over time, and we all know that the mental health population is just creeping up. And at the time, it was very medical intensive, and that's what we needed. We were really looking for the medical part of it. But mental health, both on the county end and the NAFCare side, has grown so much, it's at capacity again. So I think part of their proposal includes some improvements to that staffing matrix to address some of the things that I think we're a little behind in, and NAFCare is kind of indicating that too. That's still in the works, and I know, so we didn't quite include this because this wasn't part of our supplemental. This come up as of recent with of course, the outcome of that lawsuit. So that kind of covers that psych RN, and seeking a supplemental for that one to add it into continuing that on into 2023. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. On the quarterly medical audits, this is something that's also built into our contract, that there's 14 key performance indicators based off of data that we should be auditing and making sure that NAFCare is in compliance with what we expect out of the contract. There was another goal of mine on taking this position to make sure those were getting done, because they had been not consistent when I had taken this on. So working with Dr. Mark Stern, who was actually part of setting up our contract when we went out to RFP, he was able to recommend somebody that worked for Department of Corrections, a registered nurse, and oversaw their medical service for a number of years. She had retired from DOC, but was interested in, continuing in work, and provided these audits for us on a quarterly basis. She's since retired, and when she notified me that she was retiring, I started looking for replacements, and it's very hard. It's a very niche, market for that. Hard to find somebody to fill those shoes, and so I kind of looked locally of maybe a provider or an RN that might fill those shoes, and just couldn't find somebody that met the qualifications. So I looked a little more nationally. Started with NCCHC, which is a National Commission on Correctional Healthcare, who really writes the book on correctional healthcare, sets the standards, and they have an affiliate company that provides medical audits. So I reached out to them. They submitted a proposal. It's just right about that $80,000 a year. But when we looked at, we were only doing $10,000 a year on the last one. She was only looking at data for 14 key performance indicators. NCCHC would provide that same thing. But on top of that, they've got a whole list of things that they would provide that I think would be beneficial to the county when we look at those $7 million a year plus contract. They would look at the health system overall as a whole and how it's being applied in our facility. They would recommend performance improvement based off those assessments. They would also do a contract review and monitoring and give recommendations when they see gaps. They've got a suicide prevention component. I think we do pretty well at that, but we couldn't do better on that stuff. So evaluating that would be part of this. We would have access to medication-assisted treatment expertise, and they could advise us on that stuff and how we could implement it into our facility or do more of it. They also do RFP support and development for medical services contracts. Any technical assistance we would need around that. One thing I've been looking towards is getting our facility accredited for medical, which provides us, if there is litigation down the line, that it's ensuring that we're meeting all those best practices in the industry. And they help with that. And NCC, the parent company, actually does those accreditations. So you're getting the experts that help you in achieving that. And then they also provide education and training on any of these components. And they give us access as part of this auditing to physicians, psychologists, and nursing experts, which right now we had an RN, and she was wonderful at what she did, but that's that RN level. And if we go that next thing and have access to providers and psychologists, I think we're going to get a lot more comprehensive reviews and feedback out of it. So I think the cost, it justifies, what we're getting out of this. The benefits are there for the cost in it. And like I said, it's hard to find somebody, especially with the reputation the NCCHC has in the community, that it's hard to find somebody comparable.
So a question for you, so for that contract proposal, those are all the things they can do, or what have they proposed to be doing versus what would be additional?
All those options under there were included in that $80,000 proposal here. Yep. So I don't see it. They do have a component if something falls outside of this where they could provide some kind of expertise that wasn't captured in this. I want to say the proposal call out, it's like $160 an hour up to 75 hours that they'd go up to and offer that. But I was pretty impressed. It would be hard for me to go much outside of this in the first few years of this, because there's a lot of components to this that I don't even know if I could take advantage of right off the bat. It's so much to look at one time and digest it. But I think as you got further into the auditing part of it, we could start adding all that in. One thing I didn't look is, can they take some of those out? If I know I'm not going to get to a certain component of that, is it something that would come off the proposal? I just look at it kind of all comes in, what's the worst case scenario of what it would, the financial impact to the county.
And Darren's not really tooting his horn. When he went over to the medical department, there were gaps in the audits, and there's penalties associated with the contract for some of those gaps. And so just gave Darren the charge to do that, and he's really done a good job of taking that over and getting the audits on time, looking for those, those variables, and I just can't say enough about that part of it, Darren.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, because it's we already kind of hit upon it. $7 million a year. We should be making sure they're doing the things they need to do as part of that.
Definitely an important piece.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It is. And so having an independent company do that on our behalf, we could say, yeah, it looks good to us all we want, but having that backing of independent company say, yeah, they are or aren't doing the right things, and what do we do to correct them if we do find those? Right.
Going back to the contract to commissioners, NAVCARE is proposing some changes to the contract. You haven't seen it yet. Right now, Mark McLean and I and Scott are just at the preliminary stages of it. They wanted a quick turnaround on the contract, like within a month. I said, that's not doable. We're not doing that. So we're gonna look at their changes, and then particularly the staffing levels that Darren's talking about. We want to make sure that we're getting the right staffing in there and the model that we need to fit the organization. So They did send over the documents I requested there, so you and I will have to take a chance to look at those and just see if they're matching up with the levels you saw as far as, managing them. And if they had all those people in place, or were there gaps where we didn't have the staff there. And so those are the things that I really want to look at as that part of it, so we're done with. So we expect something coming forward, commissioners, pretty soon here, so.
I think it's timely. I mean, I understand why they're asking some of this stuff. I alluded to it earlier that I do feel that it's, again, we're operating up an older staffing matrix. But when we look at this, medical auditing tool, which is much more comprehensive, even me to go, NAFCARE's proposing this, and I'm like, yeah, it looks good to me. I'm still not the expert in that field, and we could adopt that, but that's where NCCHC would come in and do that assessment and go, no, we feel like you can use it here. So they could add, they could help us in coming up with that matrix and probably get a little more dialed in than what it is. We're just going by based off of what NAFCARE's telling us right now. And I think they're right in line, but I'd love somebody else to take another look at that.
The last piece I'll take back. Go back one more, there you go. So our last four supplemental requests are all kind of general M&O items. Inmate food for $363,000. We were budgeted this year for 2022 at 1.3 million. Just due to increases in cost of everything, we're projecting over 1.5 million, so we're gonna be over budget in that line item. So that's to bump it up to what we really expect 2023 to look like. And really that kind of explanation across the board, right? Those are all kind of, except for fuel, those top three are all items that we buy that have increased in cost, and our population, if you remember, that ADP is starting to creep back up. We made adjustments during the COVID years down for those items. When we saw populations go, we dropped our food costs because we were able to. So now these are starting to creep back up. So that inmate food, like I said, brings us up to 1.7 million for 2023. We're projecting 1.5-ish this year. So just a slight increase for those population increases also. Kitchen supplies, that's clamshell trays, everything else that goes into serving the food that we serve to the inmates. Commissary resale, same thing. Prices go up, inmate population's going up. So we're gonna turn around and spend more on the same thing we're providing today. Fuel, same, really the same reason. We're seeing increases in fuel, so we're gonna bump that up a little bit.
Bryce,
Immaterial in the grand scheme of $55 million, but still.
Bryce, is the commissary, that stuff that is purchased by the inmates?
Correct, yep,
So-
so we'll buy them, we turn around and I think everything we sell is like 10 cents more than we buy, 25 cents more than we purchase it for, but the inmates will turn around and buy it back from us.
So fair to say that'll have a revenue uptick as well?
Correct.
Okay, so it's kind
Yep,
of
on the
neutral.
opposite side on the revenue, yep.
Okay.
So will always be a little bit of a margin there, just for our administration of running the commissary program. Anything that's left over beyond that goes back into the inmate welfare fund, which has to be then turned around and spent back on the inmates for indigent items or programs that inmates can take advantage of. Next slide.
Okay, just kind of wrapping it up, same thing. So the challenges we're having next year, staffing will be the number one you hear over and over again. So working with Director Sparber and Ashley and just everything to get people in the door. So we just spent the last 2 weeks along with HR at the fair, pretty good reception, applications coming in. So every community event that has been out there in the last 2.5 years, we've been at. So we have a training unit, our training and hiring unit, but we have one person just dedicated to recruiting out at the fair, at the community college, at the reserve centers, at those kind of things. We go to, I was at the state graduation for the 10-week academy last Tuesday, and every captain, every chief, every commander, we're all talking about the same things. Everybody's short of staff. So it's going to be an issue for years to come. We ran the figures our own, kind of looking at what our outlook on the next 10 years is. With out of 313 total employees, I mean, I'm not throwing that number out there, around 300 employees, we had almost 100 that are over 50 years old. Wasn't that the number? I mean, well, you know, and so not just corrections officers, but in the next 5 and 10 years, it was around 40 that were over 54 years old. With our retirement, you get 30 years in and 60 there leaving out the door. So I think it's going to continue to be a challenge. And so, and part of it will be coming in for money. We've already got money towards recruiting bonuses, and it'll just be more of those kind of things. Every other agency in the state's doing the same exact things. For the most part, not every, but most agencies are doing the same exact things, and they're all challenged with hiring. Right now, we're seeing it. I'm sure you guys are hearing from the sheriff's office. They're having the same. They're mirroring the same messages, but they're hiring. Them and city are hiring. Most of our people leaving, around 80% leaving, are leaving to go be patrol. And I've said over the years, even with a new contract, the corrections officers got a new contract, brought them closer to what the deputies make. Most of the younger people, if they want to go be patrol officers, go be police officers, they would do, they even do it for less money, I would say. They go to Airway Heights and Stevens County, these others, because they want their foot in the door for law enforcement. So this has always been a stepping stone for law enforcement. I think it'll continue to be so. So that was back on recruiting efforts. And then housing, jail overcrowding. Lieutenant Worth and I met with Chief Meidel 2 weeks ago on Monday, and just, we go to red light quite frequently now, more so than we ever have before. He just wanted to educate himself, and we just basically said all the same things we started the presentation was more and more violent felonies, more and more long lengthy stays, and so our real operating capacity. Mondays specifically, because after a 3-day weekend, everybody get in. If you get arrested after 8 o'clock on Friday, you're not going to court until Monday. All those arrests on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are going to court today. And so we're always jammed up on Mondays, day in and day out, going to red light, which, I don't know, you would drive by the west side of the building and police officers waiting until we have actually a bed. So we are right there right now, and quite often on a usually weekly basis. So. And this next year, so part on the revenue side, Bryce talked about, it was, when did we do these? In 2020 or when we revamped the contracts with both DOC. I know the commissioners were involved on both of those as well, was that we revamped the contract, getting a much more appropriate rate for both of those. DOC is a big portion. It's $4 million in revenues.
Marshals 4 to 5, DOC's 800 to $1 million.
Okay, between the two of them.
Miscellaneous revenue
And
side.
so it's revenue, and the other is it's an important part of the community. We've heard it over and over. It's like, oh, reduce these populations. We've heard it from a lot of different people. Problem those are offenders that need to be in custody. Federal offenders, typically high-level charges. And then the other is we hear from the Director Sparber and I have been over with the head U.S. Marshal. If they can't prosecute at the federal level, a lot of those charges would fall back to the state level, and we'd still be housing them, but we'd be prosecuting them, public defenders, the added expenses there, and no revenue. So that's what we've heard over and over again. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Nope, you're spot on.
So
what were those dollar amounts you said for DOC?
DOC's approximately $1 million. Marshals approximately $4 million. And again, those vary based on populations.
Yeah, that's more in line. It's still not in line, but it's closer than it was before, far closer.
So
yeah.
To kind of piggyback on that, these contracts expire both summer of 2023. U.S. Marshals uses historical data to calculate their rate. So our current rate from 2020 is $122 a day. Clearly, expenses have gone up with contracts and price increases. So when we go to do this one, it will be based on our 2022 and 2023 projections. So we should see an increase in that rate when the time comes.
prior to that, it was $89 a day.
85 prior to that.
And the DOC has an escalator, doesn't it, in it?
DOCs will expire. Every year they've been escalating at 3%, 5%, I remember for sure. But this one at the end of June of 23 will expire, but we've done 1-year amendments to them, assuming they'll give us those escalators. There's no reason to go renegotiate with them. Because we all sat through those negotiations for 2 years.
And what we did is we captured some of the medical expenses in that DOC contract that weren't being captured before, which was really important too, so.
Right, but the escalator should be set on some kind of CPI versus just.
That's what I assume it's set on. That's-
Right, so this, I think they just had flat rates in there on those contracts. It was just a flat percentage.
Right, so what I'm saying is
So this time it's gonna be
yes, we need to have it set, especially.
significantly higher.
Because we're gonna see, CPI is going up quite a bit, and especially with fuel and all that, they can't expect that it's gonna be a 3% a year kind of thing, so I just really wanna make sure that that's.
That will be the goal for this one. So if really, in reality, within the next couple months, we'll be talking to them about what the next plan is here.
I would just be setting them up that it's like, we're seeing, those cost increases go up, so it's like, we just need to be talking that as we look to the near future, because it's.
Agreed.
Nothing's getting cheap.
If you judge it by how long it took us to negotiate the last contract, you might want to start tomorrow.
Yes.
I'm saying, it took forever to get to that contract.
State doesn't move fast.
So,
But they're always happy to make us pay all the extra costs, and so this is the chance to say, otherwise, happy to not have them in our jail.
Yeah, no, take them to the other jails.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind, there isn't another jail. in Spokane. Yeah. So that's all we have. Any other questions for us?
no staff supplements, right? Not asking for any staff, just.
For additional staff, no, I can't ask for more until we fill the spots we have. We have
Well,
plenty
I'm
of
talking
it.
about outside of correction staff or any of those type, just no.
Actually, meeting with HR about upgrading one spot, not a new spot, but upgrading one today we're talking about, but nothing big, not adding any, because we have vacancies at Cooks, we have 4 vacancies, clerical, we have 6 vacancies as of Friday when somebody walked on us. So,
Friday?
so we have plenty of vacancies all over. We don't need any new spots, we need to fill the ones we have.
You're the first department to actually say that, though.
Oh, well,
That's right.
yeah, I can't come here. Hey, can you give us a few more spots we can't fill? I probably shouldn't say that.
The one request to go along with that is we will continue to hire for our 30
Yeah.
vacancies, so the vacancy reduction may, if it's slid off to the side, we may come back and say, hey, we're hopefully to the point where we're eating into the vacancy.
That would be a good thing.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, we brought hiring from, traditionally it was every 3 months we were hiring, just to get no candidates. We got the last group in 2, and that's the goal is to get them done in 2 months.
Somebody did the other test, turn up with the test on.
Test hasn't happened yet, it's coming up. I'd have to look, after the fair, we had a lot more applications, so I haven't looked at the numbers. I looked at them last week, but I think test is actually next weekend.
Yeah, first week of October, I think is what I heard.
Super. Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to try to summarize and recap a little bit for what we've had in terms of discussions, to put things in perspective, the detention services, their base preliminary budget represents 23.4% of the total base submitted preliminary general fund budget. When you add the sheriffs, we've already covered the sheriffs, that's another 22.5, and the prosecuting attorney at 6.1. Those 3 departments out of 33 agencies account for 52% of the base submitted budget of the 235 million. Now, we have scheduled for this afternoon 5 departments. One of those departments, juvenile services, really doesn't have much in terms of the supplemental FTE and M&O. They do have capital requests, but we're trying to fit in additionally 5 more departments here that will need to come and present before the board because they do have supplemental requests. That's civil service, law and justice administration, pretrial services, public records, and veteran services.
So we had agreed last week that as part of my HR presentation this afternoon, I was talking about public records. And then I didn't think civil service was so impactful that I needed to present, but I can quickly pull some slides together if I need.
Just depends on what the board wishes.
It's like less than a 26.
It's $13,000 in M&O. You can just give us a
Brief overview.
I can cover veteran services quickly right as after I do my scraps. Does that work?
Perfect, thanks, Kat.
Yep.
And so that brings us to calendars and schedules a little bit, and we would be looking at some dates now, starting October 10th and 11th to try to finish out both the supplemental requests on the FTEs and M&O, plus starting all of the capital request supplemental budgets. If those Mondays and Tuesdays to start with those scheduled departments meets with the board's approval.
So you wanna do it, Monday afternoon?
Yes, we could start Monday afternoon, and because of the time frame, we might wanna do Tuesday mornings also, until we've cleared the schedule of all of the supplemental requests.
Well, if you said there's 5, of which.
For supplemental FTEs and M&O, and there's probably about 8 on the capital.
Yeah, and some of the capital, like Kat will probably address animal control capital requests as part of her larger conversation this afternoon.
And then she's doing veteran services as well.
Yeah, for their FT, and then Ashley will get civil service knocked off. Would you like to hear, Mike, how about you just talk about pretrial real quick in law and justice? Your request, you asked to reclassify Diane Lindquist
Yes.
from a data systems analyst 1 to a 2.
Yeah, from a 1 to a 2. I think in reviewing her jobs, her skill set, and the things that she does for law and justice, which is a lot of statistical work that's not Aaron Lynn's forte. He's more of a programmer, those type of things. I think she certainly fits within the criteria of the second level. So I submitted, I'd like to keep her, and she is entertaining other jobs as well. She's on maternity leave right now, and I'd like to hang on to her if I could, because she's a pretty intricate part of what we're doing, and for MacArthur and all the stats that are going along with it. So I made a request to bump her up to level 2.
And what's that additional request?
It is a $9,762 difference.
Did it go through your office? I think so. Did it go through her office?
He's submitting it as part of his budget process request, not a formal reclassification mid-year or earlier.
But we're still gonna need to look at the position to determine if it truly does meet the criteria for the reclass. And so my office
I
hasn't
assumed
looked
it
at
already gone through it.
We'll
Yeah.
work on that then to make sure that the position duties align there.
And then pretrial services would like to request $4,000 for some travel.
Right.
That was their full
They have
request.
no travel budget in
They have
and so they asked for a $4,000 travel budget added to their budget. I didn't think that was unreasonable.
So with those things being covered, we may only need the Monday afternoon, starting the 10th.
Yeah, let's try for Monday afternoon and see what we can get accomplished.
And that's capital, Gary?
Yes.
Okay, because we'll,
But the only, because of the scheduling with juvenile services, they'll have a capital presentation today, so we can start knocking them out too.
Okay.
They have some nice pictures and everything to show, so.
so with any of the remaining supplementals are pretty tiny, we're not gonna have a different session on them, right? After today?
Not unless you feel a compelling need for it.
So I thought we just said Monday afternoon for anyone else that needs to come.
To clean up any other any changes between now and then starting with the capital requests.
So you will have time the rest of this week and next week to figure out
schedule, yeah.
if we need to schedule that Monday afternoon, but we won't cancel that meeting until we know. Just let Commissioner French know that's a possibility. That's what we're.
I would say Monday afternoon will be a definite hold because we will have capital items to start reviewing for our 6-year capital plan update, plus what's being asked for the 2023 budget.
So Monday afternoon, the 10th.
Yeah.
So can you make sure Stephen knows to book that as a budget workshop for us? Okay. Okay, is there anything else at this point in time? Kind of gone through all the other miscellaneous. Okay, so then we are going to be continuing this meeting to 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. As there's this afternoon.
No, tomorrow morning.
But we have this afternoon a working session too, right?
But it's already been.
Right, that's already said. So this meeting, I'm not going to be adjourning. I'm going to be continuing this meeting to tomorrow at 9 o'clock for further discussions. Mr. McLean, is that? Okay, got the thumbs up. That's what we're doing. Okay, so for this strategic planning meeting, we'll continue tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and then we'll be back this afternoon for the separate working session meeting that we will